The rain pounded Asheville in waves that felt almost biblical, each thunderclap rattling the windows of the police K-9 unit so hard it seemed like the whole station might come unmoored. Water dripped in from a cracked window above Rook's enclosure, pooling around the concrete floor, as if the world was weeping just for him. 5 officers stood in a tense semicircle, eyes darting from one another to the battered German shepherd pacing behind the chain-link door. Rook's massive body was tense, all muscle and trauma, his right ear permanently bent, a pale scar slicing through his thick fur like a warning. Each time the lightning flashed, he bared his teeth, a guttural sound, more grief than menace. "He went for Sergeant Klein last night," one officer muttered, low. "Took 3 of us to pull him off. Nobody wants to be the one who calls it, but we're out of options." Across the room, another cop, Rookie by the way he flinched at Rook's growl, rubbed his hands together. "You ever seen a dog like that just break? I heard he chewed clean through the gate at the old training yard. Whole department's afraid of him." Rumors buzzed like hornets. Some whispered that Rook was cursed, broken by things nobody could understand. Others said today was his last chance, the final evaluation before someone signed off on a decision nobody wanted to make. The tension was thick enough to chew. A clipboard dangled from the kennel door, names and dates scribbled and crossed out in quick frustration. The dog's future, hanging by a thread, was about to unravel. In the midst of this storm, a woman stepped in, boots dripping, raincoat unbuttoned, brown hair escaping its bun. Dr. Marissa Chen, 35, child psychologist turned police consultant, scanned the room with a cool, quiet energy. Her mismatched earrings glinted in the overhead light. A tiny crescent moon on the left, a silver leaf on the right. She clutched a small notepad, thumb tracing the edges as if it were a talisman. But she wasn't alone. Next to her stood a small girl, maybe 8 years old, holding Marissa's hand with quiet certainty. Eliana Eli Garcia moved as if she were gliding, cane folded under one arm, head tilted just so. Her gaze, unseeing, landed exactly where Rook was pacing. The room fell silent, disbelief rippling like static. The sergeant cleared his throat. "Dr. Chen, I'm not sure this is—" Marissa's voice cut through the tension, soft but absolute. "I understand the risks, but I need Eli to meet him. She isn't afraid. Let her try." Whispers erupted. "That's not protocol. She's just a kid." "He's dangerous, Marissa. Don't do this to her. Liability, liability, liability." The chief's face was pale, his knuckles white as he gripped the edge of a desk. But desperation can be a strange permission. He nodded, almost imperceptibly. Lightning split the sky again. Rook spun, hackles raised, eyes wild. Eli let go of Marissa's hand, stepping forward with a slow, deliberate calm. She spoke, her voice almost a whisper. "It's okay, boy. It's just rain. I'm here." Rook froze mid-step. For one breathless moment, every muscle in his body seemed to coil tighter. Then something changed. He sat, awkward and stiff, head bowed, as if surrendering to a force older than his fear. Eli reached out, finding his fur with gentle fingers, her palm pressing softly against the scar on his chest. All eyes were on them. The monster, tamed by the touch of a blind girl, the miracle nobody expected. Rook shuddered, but did not flinch. His eyes, haunted, wary, lifted to Eli's face. She smiled, her other hand stroking his bent ear. "You're not alone, Rook. Not anymore." For the first time, the dog's breathing slowed. The thunder rolled on, distant now, almost a lullaby. Marissa let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. She scribbled something in her notepad, hands shaking. The officers exchanged looks, fear, awe, maybe hope, unsure which emotion to trust. A new rumor would bloom that day. The wild dog who bowed his head for a little girl. No one could explain it. Some called it luck. Others whispered about ghosts, about second chances. As the storm raged beyond the window, Eli stayed with Rook, humming a melody only she seemed to know. Marissa watched them, her own heart pounding, something long buried flickering to life. Outside, dawn tried to break through the clouds. Inside, something else broke, something brittle, something painful. But in that shattering, there was light. The girl stroked the dog, and the dog, for the first time in years, allowed himself to be comforted. And as the officers backed away, shaken but changed, Marissa knew nothing would ever be the same. Not for Rook, not for Eli, not for her. Cliffhanger. Eli stepped deeper into the enclosure, kneeling as Rook lay down at her side, eyes closing in trust. Thunder rolled overhead, but inside that kennel, a miracle was quietly unfolding, one that would test every rule, every fear, and every secret waiting just beneath the skin. The storm had eased, but the mood in the Asheville K9 unit was anything but calm. News of what happened with Rook and Eli rippled through the department like wildfire. Some officers shook their heads, muttering about reckless therapy tricks. Others simply avoided Marissa's gaze, unsure how to process what they'd witnessed. In the break room, over bitter coffee, the talk was harsher. Words like liability, irresponsible, and lucky hung in the air. The morning briefing was tense, the chief's voice flat as he addressed the previous day's events. Dr. Chen's methods aren't protocol, he said. But yesterday, we saw something none of us can explain. His eyes flickered to Marissa, an unspoken warning, or maybe a plea. Marissa kept her own counsel, writing quietly in her notepad. She felt the eyes on her, the skepticism, the judgment. More than once, she caught herself glancing at her mismatched earrings for comfort. She'd long ago accepted that trust was hard-won in places like this, especially for outsiders, and especially for someone with her history. But what mattered now was Rook and the fragile bridge between him and Eli. Rook was no longer the department's pariah, at least not for the moment. He refused food from any handler, but would accept a biscuit from Eli's hand. The sight of the two of them, Rook pressed close, Eli's hand buried in his fur, humming softly, was unsettling in its intimacy. Rook ignored everyone but her, trailing behind her gentle voice as if tethered by something invisible. Later that day, Marissa stood outside Rook's enclosure, watching as Eli sat cross-legged on the floor, fingers tracing the dog's scar. Rook trembled at the distant wail of sirens, muscles bunching, jaws clenching, but Eli pressed her forehead against his, whispering words too soft for anyone else to catch. Slowly, almost miraculously, the tension leaked from Rook's body. He let out a long, low sigh and settled his head in Eli's lap. Marissa felt a tightness in her chest. She recognized that kind of comfort, the way trauma survivors seem to find each other, communicating with touch and silence rather than words. It was something she herself had craved growing up, someone to sit beside her and simply be there. But the department was far from convinced. In the hallway, Officer Jonas pulled Marissa aside. "You got lucky, Doc. Don't push it. That dog's a ticking time bomb." His tone was sharp, but Marissa only nodded, hiding her own trembling hands. She'd heard warnings before. That night, Eli's mother, Camila, called Marissa in a panic. "Eli woke up screaming," Camila said, her voice shaking. but not in English. She kept crying out for El Hombre en la Tormenta, the man in the storm. And then she said something in German. I don't even know where she learned those words. Marissa's heart pounded. Can you remember what she said? Camilla hesitated. I think it was, Komm heim. She said it over and over, like a prayer. Marissa's mind raced. German? Why? She sat up late, laptop glowing in the dark, combing through Rook's military records. Most of the files were standard: unit assignments, training logs, incident reports marked redacted. But buried at the end of the packet was a section that stopped her cold. Handler information, classified, incident report attached, sealed under federal order. There was also a note about a child casualty, see file 9B47. But the file was missing. She frowned, rubbing her temples. The deeper she dug, the more questions surfaced. Rook's original handler was never named. Some of the service logs were altered, and dates didn't match up. There was a gap in the record, a period of weeks lost, no explanation. Her cursor hovered over an encrypted link. For authorized personnel only. Marissa hesitated, then reached for her phone, dialing Officer Marcus Harlan, a rookie who'd quietly befriended her. Marcus, you ever notice anything weird in Rook's paperwork? Marcus sounded tired, but curious. Yeah, the old-timers say he came back from Europe with a handler who didn't make it. Supposedly there was a kid involved, a girl, or maybe a boy. Nobody really talks about it. Can you help me get into the restricted files? Marissa asked. A pause. That's risky, but let me see what I can do. The following morning, Marissa met Eli and Camilla at their modest apartment. The girl was pale, circles under her eyes, but she seemed calmer with Rook beside her. While Camilla made tea, Marissa sat with Eli on the rug. You know German, Eli? She asked gently. Eli shook her head. No, but sometimes I remember words and music. From before. Her voice faded, fingers curling into Rook's fur. Before what, sweetheart? Marissa's tone was soft. Eli just whispered, the cold, the man in the storm. He sang to me. Rook licked Eli's cheek, letting out a quiet whine. Marissa scribbled furiously in her notepad, mind spinning. Back at the precinct, Marcus found her in the parking lot, breathless. Chen, you gotta see this. He held out a small drive. I found a reference to a chip in Rook's neck. His service ID is encrypted on it. There's an access file. Together they scanned Rook and found the chip's location. The code led to a hidden folder online, a series of redacted images, files, and a video, audio distorted but clear enough. In the background, a man's voice sang softly in German as a child laughed. Rook was there, tail wagging, protective. The last frame, Rook standing guard over a little girl, dark-haired and blindfolded, as explosions echoed in the distance. Marissa's hands trembled. The past was bleeding into the present. She turned to Marcus. This is bigger than any of us thought. Cliffhanger. As Marissa shut down the computer, her phone vibrated. An anonymous message flashed on her screen. Stop digging, for your own safety. And somewhere in the dark, Rook whimpered, his nightmares echoing through the silence. A warning, or maybe a memory calling him back to unfinished business. The spring sun pushed through Asheville's clouds the next day, a weak promise of calm after the storm. But inside Marissa's chest, everything felt taut, unsettled. She watched through the glass as Eli sat in the grass behind the K9 unit, Rook curled against her side. The dog's eyes never left the girl. He flinched at sudden movements, at the metallic clang of a gate, at the distant shriek of sirens, But Eli's presence seemed to anchor him. His body pressed so close it was sometimes hard to tell where girl ended and dog began. Marissa took her usual notes, half for the department's files, half for herself. She was looking for patterns, something to explain this connection between Rook and Eli. At first, it had seemed like coincidence, a traumatized child and a broken dog finding solace in each other. But as the days passed, it was impossible to ignore the synchronized rhythm of their breathing, the way Eli's hand would reach out just before Rook's panic began, the mirroring of head tilts, small gestures, flinches. Marissa had never seen anything like it. She sat on the porch steps, her notepad open on her knee, trying to steady her thoughts. Her own childhood memories were always near the surface on days like this. The taste of fear, the sound of grown-ups talking in hushed voices, the ache of being told, repeatedly, that her feelings weren't real, that she was too sensitive, too much. She had learned early to watch people's hands, the tightness around their mouths, the stories their bodies told when their words failed. That was what made her good at her job, but it also meant she was never really free from the shadows of her own past. She watched Eli, remembering what the girl had said last night. The cold, the man in the storm, music and words that weren't her own. It was as if Eli carried someone else's memories inside her, and Rook, too, a silent twinship of scars. Marissa stood and joined them, sitting cross-legged in the grass. Eli's fingers played absently with Rook's collar, twisting it in slow circles. "Can you tell me about the cold?" Marissa asked, voice as gentle as she could make it. Eli hesitated, pressing her cheek against Rook's head. "Sometimes I wake up and I can't breathe. I remember the snow. It was so loud. And then he was there, the man with the music. He told me I was safe, but I couldn't see anything. Just the feeling of him holding my hand. And Rook. I think Rook was there, too." Rook let out a quiet huff, then nuzzled closer, as if he remembered the same nightmare. Marissa reached out, brushing the dog's scar with her fingertips. "Rook has a mark here. Do you know how he got it?" Eli nodded. "The fire. I felt it too." She pulled up her sleeve, revealing a faint, jagged burn on her forearm. Marissa's breath caught. She'd noticed Eli's scar before. Camilla had explained it away as a childhood accident, but now, seeing it beside Rook's, she couldn't ignore the pattern. She glanced at her notepad, where she'd drawn the outline of Rook's wound beside Eli's burn. Nearly identical. Impossible, but undeniable. Her mind raced back to the encrypted file, to the images of the blindfolded girl, the explosions, the man's voice singing in German. "Eli, do you remember any music?" Marissa asked softly. The girl nodded, humming a fragment, barely audible. It was a lullaby, foreign yet hauntingly familiar. Rook's ears perked at the sound, a low, soft whine escaping his throat. A memory surfaced in Marissa's mind, sharp as broken glass. Her own father's lullabies, sung in Vietnamese on nights when fear kept her awake. The longing for safety, for someone to fight back the dark. Later that afternoon, Marissa drove Eli and Rook home, the radio turned low, the hum of tires on wet asphalt filling the silence. At a red light, Eli spoke, startling Marissa. "Why do people forget things that hurt?" Marissa glanced at her in the rearview mirror, the girl's face thoughtful, turned toward the sunlight. "Sometimes our minds hide the hard things so we can keep going. But they never really go away. They come back in dreams or feelings or scars." Eli was quiet, petting Rook's bent ear. "I don't want to forget. Not if Rook remembers too." That night, Marissa found herself unable to sleep, haunted by the pieces she couldn't fit together. She thought of her own childhood, the school shooting she'd counseled years ago, the guilt she still carried, the way she'd failed to protect a child who'd needed her most, the feeling of being helpless, unheard. She sat at her kitchen table, old case files spread before her, comparing Rook's military logs with international missing child reports. Her eyes burned. She was chasing ghosts and she knew it. But the scars told their own story. She printed out photos of Eli and Rook, overlaying the images, tracing the burns, the shape of their wounds. There was no denying it now. The next day, she scheduled a medical exam for Rook and Eli together. The vet, a woman with graying hair and a kind face, listened as Marissa explained her suspicions. "It's unusual," the vet admitted, gently examining Rook's chest. "But trauma can leave more than physical marks. Sometimes, the way it echoes, you see these dogs and kids, they find each other for a reason." When she finished, Eli curled up beside Rook on the cold exam room floor, and Marissa sat nearby, her notebook forgotten in her lap. She felt something shift, an understanding, a kind of grief, but also hope. Maybe, she thought, scars weren't just signs of what was broken. Maybe they were proof that healing was still possible. As she drove home, the mountains faded into dusk, and Marissa allowed herself, for the first time in a long while, to believe that sometimes the past returned not just to haunt, but to be rewritten. She reached for her notepad and scribbled a single word: connection. Outside, the rain began again, softer this time, like a memory gently refusing to fade. The following week, the rain seemed endless, tapping a steady rhythm against the windows as Marissa Chen plunged herself into Rook's file, combing through government records with the intensity of someone clinging to a thread in the dark. It was a slow, painstaking process. Most of Rook's military records were redacted, whole sections blacked out, pages stamped with classified and restricted access. But Marissa was used to digging beneath the surface. She'd built a career out of listening for what people didn't say, the truths buried between silences. Officer Marcus Harlan, young, eager, a bit of a loner himself, became her reluctant partner in this search for answers. He'd only recently transferred to Asheville, and he still approached everything with a rookie's raw nerves, but his uncle had served with K-9 units overseas. When Marissa told Marcus what she'd found in Rook's chip, the strange encrypted video, the haunting image of a blindfolded girl and a singing man, he didn't laugh. He didn't question. He just said, "I'll help you." They set up in a small conference room after hours, files and laptops spread out beneath the flickering overhead lights. Marissa scrolled through international news clippings, piecing together what little she could. A classified incident in Eastern Europe, a rescue mission gone wrong, a child lost in the chaos of war. Each breadcrumb led to another dead end, another missing page. Yet as the hours ticked by, patterns began to emerge. She noticed names recurring: Vogel, Keller, Garcia. She found mentions of a child abduction, a military handler presumed dead, a K-9 who went missing for weeks before being returned, battered and changed. One night, Marcus slid an old, faded photograph across the table. It was a candid shot, taken years before, somewhere snowy and gray. In the photo, Rook stood beside a tall man in a military uniform, his hand resting protectively on the dog's back. But it was the eyes that stopped Marissa cold. They were gentle, haunted, and impossibly nearly identical to Eli's. Marissa's mind raced. Was this man the missing handler? Was he connected to Eli somehow? She stared at the photograph, trying to will it to answer her questions. The next day, Marissa visited Camilla's apartment. The atmosphere was heavy, as if the walls themselves had soaked up years of worry. Camilla sat at the kitchen table, twisting her wedding band, eyes red from too many sleepless nights. "She's been having dreams again," Camilla admitted, voice brittle. "But now she screams in German. She shouts things I don't understand. Something about snow and being left behind. She calls for her father. She never met him, Marissa. He died before we came to the States. That's what I was told." Marissa listened, her heart twisting. She remembered Eli's lullaby, the way Rook responded, the scars that seemed to echo across time and bodies. Later that night, Marcus found a breakthrough. A scanned death certificate, German script curling across the paper. "Lucas Vogel, died in service, 2018. Next of kin, Eliana Garcia." Marissa's blood ran cold. "Vogel," she whispered. "That's the name from the file. Eli's father." Marcus nodded. "But look, there's no cause of death listed, and the date matches the classified mission." He showed Marissa a series of old military documents, orders for witness protection, references to federal surveillance. Someone wanted this buried. A chill passed through Marissa. She leaned back, piecing together the timeline. Lucas was Rook's original handler. He must have rescued Eli during the mission. But something happened. Something so bad the government erased him, sent Eli away, and silenced everyone who knew. The weight of the truth pressed in around them, but Marissa refused to turn away. "We have to find out what really happened," she said. "For Eli, for Rook, for Lucas." They spent hours reconstructing the fragments. Phone records, medical files, snatches of coded emails. They learned Lucas had disobeyed orders, risking everything to save a child. He was branded a traitor, cut off, presumed dead, or perhaps forced into hiding by people who didn't want his story told. Rook, traumatized and injured, was sent back to the U.S. alone, his file doctored to erase the pain. As the puzzle took shape, Marissa grew more certain. The nightmares Eli suffered weren't just echoes of her own trauma. They were memories, fragments of a past she'd been forced to forget. And Rook, who shared her scars and her fears, was the only witness left. Meanwhile, outside the walls of their research, life ground on. Eli still clung to Rook, her only safe harbor. The officers still eyed Marissa with suspicion. The city's rain kept falling, relentless and gray. That evening, Marissa stood at her window, watching the lights shimmer across wet pavement. She thought about the price of secrets, the way pain festers in silence, the way children and animals carry wounds adults are too afraid to face. She remembered her own past, the years spent running from her failures, the weight of every client she couldn't save. Suddenly, her phone buzzed. A message from Marcus. "Check your email. Found something big." She opened the attachment, a series of photos from a government storage archive. One, in particular, made her gasp. It showed Lucas Vogel, older, limping, but alive, spotted in a North Carolina border town less than a month ago. A rush of hope, dread, and determination flooded Marissa's chest. She turned to the sleeping city, heart pounding. If Lucas was alive, everything might change. Eli deserved the truth. Rook deserved justice. And Marissa, haunted by her own history, knew she couldn't stop until the whole story was brought into the light. Outside, the rain finally stopped. In the hush, Marissa realized the storm wasn't over. It was only beginning. It was just after midnight when it happened. One of those hours when nightmares crawl out from under beds and nothing feels quite real. Marissa was working late at her dining table, the flicker of her desk lamp casting long shadows. Her apartment was scattered with documents, timelines, and faded photographs. Clues that still didn't make sense, no matter how many times she arranged them. She paused, rubbing her eyes, when her phone vibrated with a message from Camilla. Eli's having another episode. She keeps repeating something in German. Please help. Marissa drove through empty streets, headlights slicing the darkness, heart pounding. Rain slicked the roads, blurring the world. She found Camilla's apartment ablaze with light, the living room crowded, Eli sobbing in her mother's lap. Rook pressed so tight against her knees it looked painful. The dog's chest heaved with each of Eli's cries, as if he was breathing her terror with her. Marissa knelt, speaking softly. Eli, I'm here. What do you hear? Eli's eyes were open but unseeing, her voice lost in the storm inside her. It's so cold. Don't leave me. Komm heim, Freund. Komm heim, Rook whined, ears flattening, the low clatter of a dropped baton in the hallway. Just the janitor, but for Rook it was a trigger. He bolted upright, muscles rigid, then collapsed, trembling, his breathing ragged. Marissa saw the panic blooming in his eyes, the room closing in on him. Instinctively, Eli slid to the floor, reaching for Rook, her small hands finding the scar on his chest. Komm heim, Freund, she whispered, voice suddenly sure. Come home, friend. A silence fell. Rook's shudders eased. The bond between them glowed like a wire in the dark, visible, alive. Marissa felt goosebumps ripple up her arms. The phrase lingered in her mind, haunting, familiar. Where had Eli learned those words? She made a note, her pen shaking. As Eli calmed, Marissa took Camilla aside. I think Eli's not just remembering her own trauma. I think she's holding memories from before. Memories Rook shares. They both survived something nobody else understands. Camilla, tears still on her cheeks, nodded. She keeps asking about the music, about snow. She remembers details she couldn't possibly know. Marissa hesitated. Eli's father, Lucas Vogel, might still be alive. We've found proof he was in North Carolina less than a month ago. Camilla gasped, eyes wide. But we're not sure who's looking for him, or why. That night, Marissa returned home restless, unable to sleep. She replayed the German phrase in her head over and over, until it seemed to unlock something in her own memory. A lullaby sung to comfort, to call a loved one home. She searched her notes and the files from Rook's chip, then cross-referenced the phrase. It was used by a K9 handler in the audio recording from the encrypted video, Lucas Vogel calling his dog back from the chaos during the mission. The web was tightening. Rook, Eli, Lucas, all bound by a chain of trauma and loyalty. The following day, a storm of a different kind swept into Asheville. News broke, a federal bolo, be on the lookout, for a missing German national, Lucas Vogel, suspected in an international child abduction. The agents arrived at the precinct, crisp suits and cold stares, making the officers uneasy. The chief's office was locked down, phones ringing off the hook. Officer Marcus Harlan found Marissa in the hallway. They're saying Lucas is dangerous, that he might come for Eli. But I think they're lying. I think he's her father, and he saved her. Marissa nodded grimly. We need to protect them, all of them, and get the truth out. That evening, Eli and Camilla stayed with Marissa for safety. Rook was restless, pacing the apartment, growling at every unfamiliar noise. Lightning flickered through the windows, echoing the tension in the room. While Camilla fixed tea in the kitchen, Eli approached Marissa quietly. I remember the cold, the music, the man's coat. I remember screaming and Rook barking, Then everything went quiet, like the world disappeared. She touched Marissa's hand, eyes searching. Why do I remember things I never lived? Marissa squeezed her hand, her own voice shaky. Sometimes, when we survive something terrible, it leaves marks. And sometimes love, real love, can reach across those scars. Maybe you and Rook saved each other. As night deepened, another message came, this time not anonymous. It was from a contact Marcus had in the federal system. Lucas Vogel heading toward Asheville. Federal agents in pursuit. Keep the girl safe. Trust no one. A thunderclap shook the glass. Rook leapt onto the couch, teeth bared. Outside, a black sedan idled down the block, headlights dim. Marissa felt fear crawl up her spine. Was this help or danger? Inside the apartment, Eli sat cross-legged on the floor, arms around Rook, humming her fragment of German lullaby. The storm outside seemed to press against the walls, desperate to break in. Marissa faced the hardest choice of her career. Should she bring the secret to light and risk everything, including Eli's safety, or stay silent, protecting them, but leaving the truth buried? Her own past failures flickered before her eyes. Every child she'd lost, every moment she'd doubted herself. She looked at Eli, at Rook, at Camilla. This time she couldn't let fear decide. Cliffhanger. As midnight approached, a shadow moved across the porch, a tall, limping figure silhouetted by lightning. Rook sat bolt upright, ears perked. Eli smiled, her voice steady for the first time. "He's here," she whispered. Outside, thunder rolled, and the door rattled with the promise of revelation or ruin. Rain battered the windows as midnight crept over Asheville, thunder rumbling so close it seemed to vibrate inside their bones. Camilla drew the curtains, hands shaking. Marissa double-checked the locks on every door and window, heart racing. Rook stalked the perimeter of the living room. Each distant siren, each metallic ping outside sent him into a tense crouch, eyes glinting. Eli sat quietly on the rug, stroking Rook's fur, humming her lullaby in a voice steadier than the grown-ups around her. The power flickered, then snapped off completely. The apartment fell into thick, electric darkness. For a moment, only the staccato drum of rain and Eli's voice cut through the silence. Camilla clutched a flashlight, her face pale as a ghost. "What do we do if he's really out there?" she whispered. Marissa swallowed, forcing calm. "We stay together. No one opens the door. We wait." Her notepad was useless now, but she kept it gripped in one hand, the familiar pressure helping her focus. Then Rook's ears shot up. He whined, tail lashing. He raced to the front door and planted himself there, posture not aggressive but alert, hopeful. Eli stood, hands out, as if she could sense something the others couldn't. "He's here," she said, certainty in her small voice. A long, tense pause. Then a figure appeared beyond the window, half collapsed against the porch rail, rain pouring off his shoulders. He limped, dragging one leg, face obscured by shadows and the brim of a battered cap. Lightning flashed, revealing a man with gray-streaked hair, deep lines around his mouth, eyes tired and burning with a terrible kind of hope. Camilla gasped, recoiling. Rook barked once, then pressed against the door, whining low and urgent. Marissa's instincts warred. Every training screamed at her to call for help, but something in the way Rook's body trembled with anticipation told her this was different. She cracked the door. "Who are you?" The man looked up. His voice was raw, exhausted. "Lucas Vogel, please. I'm not here to hurt you." "I just need to see my daughter." He switched to German for a moment, the words soft and pleading. Eli, es tut mir leid. I'm sorry. Rook surged forward, nearly knocking Marissa aside. The dog pressed his head into Lucas's leg, whining, then sat obediently, tail thumping. Tears streaked Lucas's face as he knelt, cradling Rook's head, whispering in a trembling mix of German and English. Good boy. Old friend. You saved her. Camilla broke down in sobs, clutching Eli, but Eli simply walked forward, hands outstretched. Papa? The word came out half English, half German, as if she'd known it all along. Lucas gathered Eli in his arms, the three, man, child, and dog, clinging to each other in the dark. Lightning flickered again, illuminating scars on his arms. The exhaustion etched into every muscle. I tried to come sooner, he whispered, voice hoarse. They wouldn't let me. I had to keep you safe, both of you. I've run from so many people, so many lies. Marissa felt tears sting her eyes, her guard dropping as she watched a family reunited in silence more powerful than any words. Even Camilla, though trembling, could not look away. When the initial shock faded, they ushered Lucas inside. Marissa locked the door behind him. Candles cast shadows across the cramped living room, their flickering light making Lucas seem both real and spectral. Lucas sat, hunched and weary. Rook never left his side. I was a handler in Europe, Lucas began, voice low. Rook was my partner. The mission went wrong. Orders changed. They told me to leave the girl behind. I couldn't. I disobeyed. We ran. I took Eli and Rook, got her out through the snow and gunfire. They called me a traitor, said I kidnapped her. The government erased me. I've lived in hiding ever since. Camilla wept, her fear melting into grief. I thought you were dead. All these years. I wanted to come, Lucas whispered. But every time I tried, someone would find me. They threatened you. They threatened Eli. I stayed away so you could live. Eli reached up, tracing the lines on his face. I always remembered your song, Papa. And Rook. I never forgot. For a moment, the rain outside faded, the world contracting to the tiny circle of light and love in the living room. Even Marissa, who had spent years believing some wounds never healed, felt something inside her loosen. A belief in miracles maybe, or just a hard-won hope. But the respite was brief. Rook's head snapped up, growling low. Outside, headlights swept across the window. The agents had arrived, black SUVs crawling the street, radios crackling. Marissa's phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. They're closing in. Get out now. I'll buy you time. Heart hammering, Marissa sprang into action. We need to leave, now. Lucas, can you walk? He nodded, determined. If it keeps her safe, I'll crawl if I have to. Marissa grabbed her coat, shoving files and flashlights into a backpack. We'll go through the woods behind the house. Rook knows the trails. Eli squeezed her father's hand, her other arm around Rook's neck. Don't let go. Lightning struck again, illuminating the terror and resolve on every face. Marissa led them out the back door into the raging storm, guided by Rook's sure, silent path through the trees. The rain swallowed them, the darkness closing in. But together, father, daughter, dog, and the woman who refused to let them give up, they vanished into the night. The chase was on, and this time they would fight for truth, for family, for the chance to finally come home. The woods behind Camila's house were slick and unforgiving, every root and rock made treacherous by the rain. Marissa led the way, flashlight beam bouncing through the undergrowth, her breaths coming in shallow, careful bursts. Rook loped ahead, no longer the haunted creature trembling at every sound, but a sentinel with purpose. His nose low, body pressed to Eli's side. Rook navigated the hidden trails as if he'd memorized them in another lifetime. Behind her, Lucas stumbled, pain etched in every step. He kept one hand gripped tightly in Eli's, the other on Rook's back for support. Camilla moved beside them, her fear transmuted into a fierce maternal determination. Marissa felt the weight of leadership settle onto her shoulders, heavy but steadying. For the first time in years, her mind was clear. She would not let them be caught. Not after all the secrets, all the loss. The rain muffled the sound of pursuit, but the threat was never far. Blue strobes flashed distantly through the trees. Helicopter rotors cut the sky, searchlights arcing over the mountaintop. In the brief silences between thunder, they could hear shouts and the crunch of boots on wet leaves. They kept moving, every sense stretched to the breaking point. Rook would pause, ears swiveling, then surge ahead, always steering them away from the lights. He shielded Eli from low branches, nudged Lucas along when the older man faltered. Eli, tired, blind, but uncomplaining, clung to her father and her dog, whispering encouragement. "Almost there, Papa. Rook's got us." Suddenly, a shout rang out from behind. A beam of light slashed through the trees. "Federal agents! Stop where you are!" Camilla gasped, pulling Eli close. Lucas tensed, ready to fight, but Marissa shook her head. "No, trust me, this way." She darted left, leading them down a barely visible ravine, mud sucking at their feet. Rook followed, growling low, his hackles raised. At the bottom of the ravine, they found an old footbridge spanning a swollen creek. The wood creaked ominously under their weight, but they crossed, boots splashing, breath fogging in the cold air. The agents' voices grew faint behind them. The bridge, Marissa realized, had bought them precious minutes. Still, the danger was unrelenting. Halfway up the next ridge, Lucas stumbled and fell to his knees. Marissa dropped beside him, checking his wound, a gash on his thigh, bleeding but not yet serious. "I can make it," Lucas insisted, voice hoarse. "Just help Eli, please." But Eli clung to him, refusing to let go. Rook pressed against them both, eyes luminous in the dark. "We do this together," Eli whispered. "Don't leave me again." In that moment, Marissa felt her own past failures, the children she hadn't been able to save, press in on her. She forced herself to stay present, to breathe, to lead. "Lucas, lean on me. Rook, guide Eli. Camilla, you help me with Lucas." The group moved together, slow but steady, bound by something fierce and unspoken. Rook took the lead, Eli's hand on his collar. Camilla braced Lucas, murmuring prayers in Spanish and English. Marissa brought up the rear, flashlight gripped so tight her knuckles ached. As they crested the ridge, the woods opened onto a clearing, a ranger's cabin, squat and dark, just as Marcus had described. They rushed inside, locking the door behind them. Marissa flicked on a lantern. Yellow light filled the space, revealing dust, cobwebs, and, blessedly, a working radio. Eli collapsed beside Rook, her breathing shallow. Lucas slumped to the floor, exhaustion finally overtaking him. Camilla wrapped them both in her arms, tears streaming down her face. Not just fear, but relief too. For a brief moment, the world outside felt very far away. Marissa turned on the radio, tuning through static until a voice came through. "Marcus, they're on your trail, but I bought you some time. Told them you'd doubled back toward the highway. You've got maybe an hour, maybe less. Get your story straight. Decide what you want to do." Marissa's heart leapt. Marcus had risked everything, his badge, his future, to give them this chance. She turned to Lucas. We can't run forever. It's time to tell the truth. Are you ready? Lucas looked at his daughter, at Rook, at Camilla. He nodded, tears glittering in the lantern light. No more secrets. Outside, the storm began to fade, replaced by a hush broken only by wind in the pines. The group huddled close, Rook's head resting in Eli's lap, Lucas's arm wrapped protectively around them both. In that fragile peace, Marissa allowed herself to believe, not just in survival, but in redemption. Her own fears softened, replaced by the quiet conviction that she was exactly where she was meant to be. As the lantern flickered, Camilla whispered, "If we're together, we can face anything." Eli nodded, humming her song, fingers twined in Rook's fur. Lucas closed his eyes, breathing in the safety of his family for the first time in years. Marissa turned to the window, watching the dawn begin to break over the mountains, gold and hopeful. For the first time, she didn't feel like she was running from her past. She was running towards something worth saving. But outside, the hunters were still closing in, and the greatest test, the test of truth, of justice, of healing, was yet to come. Daybreak in the Blue Ridge brought a deceptive stillness, fog curling in the hollows, pine needles gleaming with rain. Inside the ranger's cabin, the world felt suspended. 5 souls and a dog huddled close as the outside tightened its grip. Lucas sat slumped at the scarred table, face lit by the dim glow of Marissa's lantern, his daughter's hand clasped in his. Camilla poured coffee, her nerves barely stilled by the ritual. Rook lay at Eli's feet, eyes watchful, body taut, as if sensing the danger that still lingered outside. They didn't have long. The radio spat static, then Marcus's voice, urgent but calm. "They're searching the trails. They'll reach you within the hour. I'm feeding them a false trail, but you'll have to face them soon. Are you ready?" Marissa felt the old familiar tremor, a blend of anxiety and resolve. She looked at Lucas, Eli, and Camilla. "We go public," she said. "We show the world what really happened. We live stream the truth." Her hands shook as she set up her phone, the trembling less from fear now and more from the weight of what was about to happen. Lucas nodded, his face pale but set with determination. "No more running." The first black SUVs crunched up the gravel outside, headlights piercing the mist. Federal agents fanned out, radios crackling. Camilla hugged Eli close, whispering prayers. Rook bristled, standing guard between the family and the door. When the knock came, authoritative, unyielding, Marissa stepped forward. "We're not hiding anymore. You want the truth? Here it is." She opened the live stream on her phone, her voice unwavering. "My name is Dr. Marissa Chen. We are with Eli Garcia, her mother Camila, and Lucas Vogel, her father, presumed dead, wrongly accused. We're here to set the record straight." The lead agent, a man with steely eyes and a clipped accent, pushed inside. "Ma'am, this is a federal investigation. You are harboring a fugitive and a child at risk." Marissa stood her ground, holding up her badge, then her phone. "The only risk here is the truth being buried. We have evidence. Medical records, scars, encrypted files, even audio from Rook's chip. We have a child who remembers every detail, and a father who risked everything to save her life." She handed over a flash drive. The files that Marcus had painstakingly recovered. Images of Rook and Lucas in Eastern Europe. The classified orders. The footage of Eli as a blindfolded, terrified child. And finally, the military orders that had demanded Lucas leave her behind. He disobeyed to save his daughter. For that, he was erased, made a scapegoat so others could keep their secrets. As agents listened, Lucas stood, leaning heavily on the table, his voice hoarse but clear. I was ordered to abandon my partner and my child. I refused. I would do it again. We ran, but we never stopped looking for justice. My daughter, she carries the scars. So does Rook. We're not running anymore. Eli, trembling but determined, reached for the phone. Her small voice rang out, steadier than anyone expected. Rook saved me. Papa saved me. I remember the snow and the singing and the fire. I remember being lost, and then found. The tension in the room crackled. Some agents shifted uncomfortably. Others glanced at the evidence, uncertainty clouding their authority. Camilla stepped forward, voice shaking. We have lived in fear too long. We will not be silent anymore. Marcus's voice came through on the radio. You're live, Marissa. The whole country is watching. The live stream's chat began to explode. Comments, questions, support pouring in from across the nation. Reporters picked up the feed. Questions about government cover-ups, accountability, the loyalty of a father and a dog. Suddenly, the whole story was impossible to ignore. The lead agent wavered, eyes darting between Marissa, Lucas, and the screen in her hand. He holstered his weapon, lowering his tone. We'll need to review all this. Nobody leaves until the investigation is complete. But you have my word. Nothing will happen to the girl or the dog. Relief swept through the cabin, sudden and overwhelming. Camilla sagged in a chair, tears finally spilling down her cheeks. Lucas knelt beside Eli and Rook, cradling them both, shoulders shaking. For the first time in years, his voice held hope. The hours that followed were a blur of interviews, evidence collection, and legal back and forth. Marissa watched as the truth, finally spoken, changed everything. The news ran the story nationwide. War hero reunites with daughter, exposes government cover-up. A German shepherd's loyalty unmasks years of injustice. By nightfall, the threat had faded. The agents withdrew, no longer adversaries but silent witnesses to the family's courage. The DA's office called. Lucas would not be charged. The case was reopened, this time with Eli's testimony and Rook's story front and center. That night, in the hush after the storm, the cabin felt transformed. Marissa sat outside, listening to the wind in the pines, the soft murmur of voices inside, and the steady, contented breath of Rook at Eli's feet. The nightmare was over. The healing, finally, could begin. Eli curled against Rook, whispering, "You brought us home." Lucas stroked her hair, tears drying on his cheeks. Camilla, voice full of quiet strength, began to plan, a future not built on fear, but on hope. Marissa closed her eyes and allowed herself to feel it. Peace, hard-earned and real. The cabin was no longer a place of hiding, but a place where the truth had set everyone free. The rain that had haunted Asheville for weeks faded into a gentle mist, turning the mountains soft and green. As the media frenzy died down and the agents disappeared, a quiet settled over Eli's world, a fragile, precious quiet, full of possibility. The ranger's cabin, once a last desperate sanctuary, became a temporary home while lawyers worked and Marissa coordinated with authorities to ensure Lucas's safety. The hardest parts were over, but for the family and for Rook, true healing was only just beginning. The first sign of real change came in the simple things. Eli, who for years had clung to her mother's side, began to venture out with Rook at her hip, his steady body guiding her steps. Sometimes Marissa would watch from the window as the two moved together across the dew-wet grass, Eli's hand resting lightly on the dog's scarred back, both of them calm in a way that seemed impossible just weeks before. There were still nightmares, of course. Some wounds never fully disappeared. But now, when Eli woke trembling, Rook was always there, curling against her side, his warm breath and slow heartbeat reminding her that she was safe. Marissa spent more and more time with the family, sometimes in her professional role, sometimes simply as a friend. She watched Lucas and Camilla relearn how to be partners, no longer defined by fear and loss, but by small daily kindnesses. Lucas was still haunted by what he'd endured in exile and the guilt of all those missing years, but his voice no longer shook when he spoke. He learned how to braid Eli's hair, how to cook her favorite meals, how to laugh at Rook's gentle, ridiculous snoring. One afternoon, Marissa joined Eli and Rook at the K9 unit, where a new program was quietly taking shape. Chief Owens, chastened by the national attention but moved by Eli's story, agreed to let her volunteer with the dogs, especially those marked difficult or unadoptable. Eli sat cross-legged in the big enclosure, hands steady as she stroked the head of a trembling German shepherd. Rook sat close, his presence calming not just the other dogs, but also the officers who had once feared him. Eli's empathy, her quiet patience began to work wonders. Word spread among the staff, the blind girl who could calm even the most broken dogs. The dogs learned to trust her, drawn by a gentleness that needed no words. Even some of the more skeptical officers softened, offering biscuits or hesitant praise as Eli and Rook worked. For the first time, Rook seemed at peace, content to let his own scars fade into the background. Camilla found her own calling too. Inspired by her daughter's courage, she began to volunteer with local immigrant families, helping them navigate the bureaucracy that had once threatened to swallow her own. Her Spanish, her fierce maternal love, became a beacon for others lost in the maze of the American system. She told their story, honestly but without bitterness, helping others believe in the possibility of justice and healing. Marissa, for her part, found that the case had changed her as well. Years of self-doubt and guilt over children she'd lost to the system slowly began to loosen their hold. She let herself believe that second chances were possible, even for her. She started a support group for children and families living with trauma, inviting Lucas and Camilla to share their experiences and always welcoming Rook and Eli as honored guests. One evening, after a long day of volunteering, Marissa walked with Lucas by the edge of the woods. The sun dipped low, washing the world in gold. "I never believed we'd have this," Lucas said, voice thick. "I thought I'd be running forever." Marissa smiled, her own burdens light for once. "You stopped running. You fought for your family, and you trusted the truth." Lucas shook his head, emotion choking him. "I didn't save them alone. You did that. And Rook." Marissa reached down, stroking Rook's bent ear, while the dog leaned into her, eyes half closed. "Sometimes the most broken among us are the ones who know how to heal best," she murmured. "Rook was never dangerous, just misunderstood." Inside the house, Camilla taught Eli to bake pan dulce. Rook waited by the oven, tail thumping. When the bread came out, warm and fragrant, Eli fed Rook a piece, laughing when he tried to eat it in one bite. The sound filled the room with sunlight. That night, Eli asked to sleep in her own room for the first time since Lucas's return. Rook curled up on the rug beside her bed, and when the old nightmares came, Eli reached down, her hand resting in his fur. She didn't cry out for her mother. She didn't need to. Marissa wrote in her notepad before bed, a habit she'd clung to all her life. True healing isn't forgetting the past. It's living with it, and letting it teach you how to love better. The loyalty of a dog, the courage of a child, the persistence of a parent. These are what remake the world, one scar at a time. She paused, realizing for the first time in years, she wasn't haunted by her failures. She was hopeful, not just for Eli or Rook or Lucas and Camilla, but for herself too. Summer came to Asheville in a burst of sunlight and birdsong, painting the hills bright green. Months had passed since that night in the ranger's cabin, but the memory of fear no longer haunted Eli, Lucas, Camilla, or Rook. Life at last had begun to feel like something they could trust. On a golden morning, the Asheville Police Department hosted a public ceremony in Pack Square Park. The mayor, the chief of police, and dozens of community members gathered, but it was Eli, Lucas, Camilla, and Rook who were at the heart of it all. Marissa stood just behind them, her notepad in hand, her mismatched earrings catching the light. She smiled, feeling something inside her settle. Pride, gratitude, and an odd, bittersweet awe for the journey that had brought them all here. A line of children waited with their parents, hands in the fur of therapy dogs. Thanks to Eli and Rook, the department had started a K9 therapy program. Dogs once labeled unfit now wore blue vests, working alongside Marissa and other counselors to comfort kids facing trauma. Rook, with his bent ear and faded scar, led the pack, tail high, eyes shining with an old, deep wisdom. Eli, dressed in a simple blue dress, stood on the park stage with her family. She felt nervous, but Rook was at her side, as always. She squeezed his collar, feeling the steady thump of his heart beneath her palm. Lucas stood behind her, hand on her shoulder, while Camilla watched from the front row, tears bright in her eyes. The mayor stepped to the microphone, her voice strong and kind. Today, we honor a remarkable family and an extraordinary dog. Their courage and the tireless work of Dr. Chen reminds us that truth, loyalty, and compassion can change not just lives, but entire communities. A round of applause rose, warm and genuine. Eli smiled, her face turned to the sound. Marissa leaned in, whispering encouragement. When you're ready, the world is listening. Eli nodded, stepping to the microphone. The park hushed, the only sound a mourning dove calling from the trees. My name is Eli Garcia, she began, her voice clear. I used to be afraid all the time. I thought I'd never have a real home, or a place where people believed me. She paused, breath trembling, Rook nuzzling her hand. But home isn't just a house or a place. Home is the people who don't give up on you. It's a dog who never leaves your side. It's family, sometimes the one you're born with, and sometimes the one you find. She lifted her head, a soft strength in her words. I learned that we can't always erase our scars, but we can make something good out of them. We can help other people who are hurting. That's what Rook does, and that's what I want to do too. Thank you for letting us belong. The crowd was silent for a moment. Then applause swelled, thunderous and heartfelt. Lucas wiped his eyes. Camilla reached for Marissa's hand, squeezing it. Even Chief Owens, once the picture of bureaucratic detachment, dabbed at his eyes with a handkerchief. Afterward, the ceremony spilled into the park. Rook led a parade of therapy dogs, children tossing tennis balls, parents taking photos. Eli moved through the crowd, Rook guiding her, strangers stopping to thank her or share a memory of their own beloved dog. For the first time, Eli didn't feel invisible. She felt seen. Marissa wandered to the edge of the green, watching the scene unfold. She saw Lucas teaching a child how to braid a leash, Camilla showing a nervous mother how to talk to her child about loss. The laughter, the sunlight, the open faces, it all felt like the answer to every desperate hope she'd ever scribbled in her notepad. Chief Owens found her at the edge of the crowd. Never thought I'd see the day, Dr. Chen. I was wrong about Rook, about a lot of things. Marissa smiled, her voice gentle. Sometimes you have to let the storm break to find out what's really worth saving. The ceremony's closing was simple. Eli, Lucas, and Camilla stood together on stage as the mayor read a final proclamation. Rook, in his new blue vest, sat at Eli's side, a medal hanging from his collar. Eli read the last lines of her speech, her words resonant in the summer air. Home is the place where we are finally believed and finally safe. The sun broke through the clouds, and for a moment, everything felt weightless. In the days that followed, the world didn't change overnight. Trauma still existed, and not every wound healed with a speech or a medal. But something lasting had taken root, a truth the whole community could feel. People spoke up for justice. Children volunteered at the K-9 unit. Families, immigrant and native-born, shared stories, laughter, and sometimes their grief. Rook and Eli became a kind of legend in Asheville. They worked together at the K-9 unit, visiting schools and hospitals, teaching others how to listen, to animals, to children, to the quiet stories behind every scar. Marissa's support group flourished, and she herself began to write. Not just case notes, but stories about hope, about second chances, about the small, everyday acts of courage that truly change the world. And in the park, beneath spreading oaks, Eli and Rook often walked side by side, their shadows stretching together in the afternoon sun. Sometimes Lucas joined them, sometimes Camilla. Sometimes Marissa watched from a distance, notebook in her lap, a quiet, grateful smile on her face. The past would always be part of them, but it no longer defined them. They were a family, chosen, battered, but unbreakable, and their story lived on, rippling out in circles, giving hope to others who still waited for their own storm to end.